So, guys, everybody who has come early, thank you so much. This is our second time doing a webinar like this. And we actually intend going forward to do this webinar every single month. Okay, so Teledec has a continuous commitment to bringing learning and development, accessible information around new developments in training and corporate learning. And so we would like to do this every month going forward. And we've actually added to the website a webinar section where you'll be able to get information on the upcoming webinars. So first off, just to let you know that this is the second time, but we intend to be doing this more frequently going forward. We have an incredible topic, which is about, the actual developing a prototype, okay, and how to do it in a cost-effective way. The person who will be presenting is Kushal Bose. He was the person who presented last time. He's our CEO and founder, and he's put together a short 15 to 20-minute presentation about how to develop the prototype and what are the different stages involved in this particular process. But this is not the focus. The focus is always the Q&A. So we encourage you to ask as many questions as possible, and our panelists will respond in kind. So if you have any questions, just don't be shy, put them in the chat. And once they are in the chat, Chris, our administrative team member, will take them and add them to a Google presentation, and then we can come to your question later. So I'll just introduce the panelists that we have today. So Kushal, I've already introduced, and Kushal is a nuclear engineer. He's a professional filmmaker, and at Teledec, he's passionately involved with all aspects of design, and especially storytelling and deep learning, and Kushal is based out of Chicago. We then have, for a second time, again, Professor Samir Mukherjee. He's the founder and managing director of VR and AR Academia, which is involved with VR practically since its inception. Absolute specialist in VR, and he is a professor and consultant with many global institutes and corporations, and is the main organizer of the International VR Film Festival 2022, which Teledec is a partner. We then have Subhasis Mukherjee, who is the managing director and leader of insurance practice at Deloitte Consulting in Chicago. Subhasis has a master's degree in computer engineering from India and is part of the Deloitte US consulting group for core business operations. We then have, for a second time again, Bahar Gaukar. He is based out of Teledec India office, and he's the chief executive there. He's a computer engineer and has 2 decades of experience in the L&D industry, and he has a deep expertise with learning management systems. We then have, again, a repeat panelist who's Dr. TK Kuhn. He has a PhD in electrical engineering, specializing in intelligent control systems. And as the principal engineer in Advanced Technology Group, TK drives artificial intelligence related projects at Navistar US. And then finally, we have a newcomer, Dr. Suresh Krishnan. He is an internal medicine. He studied internal medicine in Bangalore and has an experience of over 28 years in the field. He completed his MD in India and postgraduate studies in Middlesex University in England and in Johns Hopkins University in the United States. Dr. Krishnan presently is a professor at Bangalore Medical College and practices at Cloud9 Hospital in India. So we have a very, very qualified group of panelists to answer your questions. And so now I will hand it over to Kushal, who will start presenting. Okay. So Kushal, do you want to take over?
Thank you. Thank you. Let me share my screen. All right. First of all, I want to start with a little 15 seconds animation. All right. That little animation was all about the need to think about deep learning. And we have a completely different topic. We'll talk about it later on. What is deep learning? And Teledec for the last 35 years has been dedicated to bring deep learning into the corporate learning space. And we have really gotten to learn more about deep learning. Today it is being very popular. Science is backing up. So today's topic, which is VR development, budgeting and costing, we believe that's the future of skills and lifelong learning. And most importantly, with the new generation of learners, the millennials and the Z generation, they have a different skill set, they have a different mindset, they have a different lifestyle. So our learning has to match that generation, is what we believe. So the choices that we make now, from the classroom to the boardroom, define the skills that you're going to be leaving behind for the learners today. So once again, thank you for joining. We are excited to bring this monthly webinar series to you, and it's available in our teledec.com/webinars page, where you can find and suggest new topic that interests you. And we have selected 12 months worth of topics right there on that page, but we can change it if you're interested for us to present some discussion. But the whole idea of this webinar is not about us presenting to you. It's about you discussing your challenges and your questions with us. So out of the 60 minutes long webinar, we have assigned about 20, not more than 25 minutes to set the context of our discussion with a deck, which is what I'm going to start doing. And the rest of the 35 to 40 minutes for Q&A from you. And that's the most important part. How can our panel, our experts, our experience can share our knowledge and technology expertise with you to help you solve your learning challenges. Typically, for decades, corporations have faced a trade-off. Of course, we are faced to prepare the learners to make good decisions, to make it right time at the right place, to right decisions. And we are faced with typically with two options. Number one is option one, most corporations have, is instructor-led training, e-learning, hands-on training, lectures, video, social learning. These are the typical methods of learning in a corporate environment today. And option two is hands-on training. There's a live, this is the more expensive part. We have a lab, we have the equipment and the technicians, and mostly it's a hands-on training. But today we have a third option, which is the best of both worlds. It's an immersive learning that offers measurable improvements over conventional learning. And we want to know how this new type of learning can really bring measurable change in our learning environment. But the first thing that most corporations ask is how much. The question of cost pretty much dictates the decisions in a boardroom environment today. So today we thought that we will break up the entire development of a VR piece and give you a good picture of what it takes to create a VR prototype. Because I believe that a prototype and a proof of concept is the right way to move forward with a VR project. So this presentation is actually for you to consider immersive learning platform, which is the VR, AR, MR, whatever, to meet your corporate learning needs. Now let's get started with the overview of the VR development process and workflow. Typically, a workflow is it starts with a strategy, and we go through analysis, storyboarding, 3D, etc., and go to the support and enhancement. But the entire process is basically developed into three parts. I call it pre-production, like a filmmaking, which is the strategy section. And the phase two is the production, which is actually the coding and creating the VR prototype. And the third thing is the post-production analytics, which means that how do we measure the VR output in our lead management system analytics. So let's start with production, pre-production, which is phase number one. As you can see in the screen, there are little circles on the left side on your screen, and these are all little dots. And that lead up to actually storyboarding, scripting, creating the 3D, et cetera, et cetera. But the pre-production, let's take a look at the deeper look at these little circles that lead up to actually to the next phase. The output of the pre-production phase is the input of the production phase. So let's take a look at the little circles on the left side. First of all, the typical training department is as follows. We have a writer, typically a technical writer, an instructional designer, or a graphic designer, a programmer, or an editor, like a video, or an LMS administration. This is a very minimal, typical corporate learning environment and management. So we, in a pre-production phase, before we get into the development phase, explore the existing practices. We don't really want to change too much from what you're doing now, but add another layer of technology to help and engage the students a little better. So we need to understand your existing organization and practices. We also understand your resources, your training environment. How do people learn? Is it on the job? Is it the classroom? Is it with a mentor? And also the role of the learners. Different learners have different roles. And we like to say that we should try to customize the learning experience to the learner's personal role. And then, of course, at the end of the day, end of the classroom or the learning, is there any compliance requirements, industry compliance, your regulatory compliance, safety compliance, and certification. And then, of course, the final piece is the understand that what are the performance requirements or the KPI that will make us believe that this learner has learned what you are designed to do. So the next part, once we understand that part, is to create the learning objectives. And this is, to me, the most essential part of the entire design, is that how do we align the learning objectives in the classroom or in the hands-on training with the objective of the identified goal. In other words, what exactly does the learner need to do in real life? What are the design of capabilities of that the learner has to do? And what are the assessment like? Is it going to be multiple choice? Is it going to be in real life question, or is it going to be performance on a machine? Or aligning the learning with the goals and learners and exact learners, and what is the age group of the learners, what's the experience of the learners. We really have to make sure that we understand the learners, the objectives, and the assessment requirement for this learning piece. Who needs to learn what? Is there any prerequisite? In other words, sometimes we put him in a content exposure, but he doesn't have the basic knowledge of electricity before he actually goes to troubleshoot a motor control center. So that's something that we really establish. And then, of course, the testing and assessment and the certification. Okay, the next thing that we discover is the group of learners who's going to learn the exact environment when we create a metaverse, we create our objects, we get the target, we must meet the exact learner's daily job that he actually has to do. Mm-hmm. So in the metaverse, when we create the VR environment, it must resemble what he actually do in real life. So we need to know the target audience. And then, of course, we have to align the audience with the goals and objectives with the right target audience, learning the right content. Then, of course, sometimes we have the same VR, but exposed to 3 different levels. And we'll come to that a little later. There could be a beginner, it could be intermediate, there could be a senior learner. So do we need to customize any of the VR pieces to meet the learning objectives of these different 3 types of learners? And of course, all of this thing has to be discussed in depth with the subject matter experts who will really guide us throughout the entire life cycle. And then, of course, during this time, we also try to understand the specific analytics. What data is it? Are we collecting retina movement? Are we collecting body movement? Are we collecting failure? Are we collecting success? What are we measuring from the head-mounted device into our learning management system? All of this has to be clearly identified in its pre-production stage. The next is every company has different ways. Some are logistical problems, some are implementation problems. Every company has its own learning challenges. Maybe there is not enough resources to help us do that. So we try to identify all the challenges in this stage, that what are we missing? And then we try to get those answered with the subject matter expert. So that this is also a very vital part of our pre-production process. The next is actually auditing all your training materials, your CAD file, your web content, your training videos, all of that. We really need to understand how you're training, what you're doing today, so that we are not actually getting out too much from what you're doing today, but adding another layer of immersive learning. So that's really our goal, to understand what you're doing today and then make it more engaging and interesting. But then, of course, we, in most cases, we actually collect a video from the client of the actual process that we are trying to create the metaverse with. Remember, the whole idea is for learners to put on your goggles, put on your headset, and then see exactly what he's going to be seeing in real life. So that's the purpose of the video. Many times our clients shoot their own video with their handheld camera or even with iPhone, or we can go and shoot it professionally if it's not too logistically difficult. Then, based on all of those criteria, we select the hardware. So which hardware do we actually select to really go forward with keeping the cost in mind, keeping the budget in mind, keeping the hardware comfort in mind, and the learners in mind, who can, one of the most common head-mounted device is some of this common ones are right here. So we do that with the inclusion of a subject matter expert and the company, which would be the best way to do. Today, the most popular and most cost-effective is about $299, $300 is the Oculus headset, which is most popular. And it's almost like the de facto standard of the industry right now. But different headsets offer different things. So we have to make sure that everything that we need to do with the prototype is actually available with that headset. It's a critical part of our solution. So this is also very important, that in the prerequisite section, we actually take for example, this picture that you are looking at right now is a bill of materials from a heat exchanger company. The heat exchanger company, our VR module is actually created for 30 stations. And each of the 30 stations has a unique action. But many of the actions at each of the stations, it's not like a Ford Motor Company assembly line, which we all know about. But each of this action follow, if you really look at the left side, you're screwing something, or you're connecting something, you're fastening something. You can just go down the bullets on the left column on the action, that all of these are repeated through different types of screws and different types of, one could be a fillet, it could be a straight face, what could be a welding, or it could be a soldering, or be fastening. But it's important from a developer's point of view that what are the common elements that reflect in the station. So station 1, station 7, station 19 may have screwing, so we really write it once and copy and paste it in other stations, so we can save money. So in other words, not every station in the final analysis, we have to start from scratch. We can take a copy and paste the lines of code that we wrote for one module, and as much as possible, we can modify it, we can apply to others. This is, we call it a commonality table, and the commonality is what actions are common to multiple actions, multiple stations. Once we build that, we have a good idea of what the storyboard is going to look like. We do this in a software or on paper. And then let's say there's the 3 different objects that are on a table, and the operator has to pick one up one at a time. And we have a top view, front view, side view of the same thing, and an isometric view of the whole operation. So we create the storyboard, and this storyboard is actually approved by the subject matter expert or the client that yes, this is really what we are talking about so this is before we started development. This is all on paper or on digitally. We have come to this point having a very good idea about what our metaverse is going to look like. So with that approval of the client, we end the phase 1. That's the pre-production phase. With that storyboard approved, and it is replicated in our phase 2, which is production and development phase. So let's look at the production phase. The production phase starts with a meeting with the subject matter expert. We understand the audience, we understand the learning objectives, that we understand the hardware, we identify who are the instructors, the training material, all of those resources that we need, and we confirm the data output format from the head-mounted device to the learning management system. All of this is clarified that we collected in the previous phase is now completely reassured and reconfirmed with the subject matter expert, completely before we start building the development. Now we come to the actual, with the strategy that we have already laid out, the subject matter expert has already approved. We actually, so there are 2, you can see in this map, the user interacts with the physical metaverse, and the metaverse simulates the actual running condition, actual life, and he makes some decisions. He actually makes some decisions, and we output the data. So all of these elements are actually put together in a metaverse, by coding, and then and of course during this whole process we have to make sure that we built it with a branding requirement for the client, choosing the theme and the graphics and the audio tracks and the narration and the data collection point, and review all of this if there's SME. This is the critical first step of the whole coding process. And the next thing is that once we have approved all of that, we start building it, map the metaverse to the real world, study the process details and the job function, and using the client videos as a real life guide. So we make sure that our metaverse looks very much like the real life. And we create the 3D objects, the learner movement, and the actions in the metaverse, and we build the prototype, and we get SME's approval. And obviously, we are completely in collaborating with the client frequently at every step. So we want to make sure that we don't have to take one step forward and 3 steps backward. So once it is all completed, then we actually show the prototype. And as you can see on the right side, there's an expert level of operator, there's a beginner level, there's an intermediate level. So we create the metaverse and create based on what we have already learned in the pre-production phase in production. Now, once we have created the prototype, we put it on demo. We collect a couple groups of testers, and then we demo it to them. We train the supervisors, and we collect their feedback as to what needs to be done, what are we missing, and then document the report in a very clear finding. And we actually, before we do the final testing, we actually do this initial testing with a chosen group of field people. Are they seeing what they see in real life in the metaverse? Are they seeing it in the metaverse? It is replicable? Is it something that adds their knowledge, their skill set by repeating it and making sure that they're functionally adapt to using the VR headset quite easily. So then, of course, with that feedback, we completely incorporate all the feedbacks, and we do test all the bugs, and we test for each iteration and schedule a realistic delivery launch. And of course, at this time, we ask the client, do you want us to train your trainers so that as the new batch of learners coming in, usually what happens, the newcomers, new hires come in, and the instructors have to hold them, hold their hands a little bit to be able to help them navigate through the VR instrument. A lot of them may have never had any VR exposure at all, but that's when we actually help them get to the instructor level training. But the delivery of the prototype, as you can see, consists of the development. We review it, we optimize it, we adjust it as the requirement, and we finally deliver it. But at this time, this is an optional feature that we ask the trainer, do you want us to help your learners, your instructors learn? So as you can see in the 4 boxes, number 1, they are in the audience, the instructors in the audience, they learn from us, and then they co-teach with us using our VR headset, and then take over and they teach us. We're in the audience, and then they are completely independent and are able to do that. This is an exercise that we would like to do it only if the client wants it. It's an optional feature. It's not included in our offer. So the pre-production and production is done now. What the result is? What is the analytics? What's the results? As you know, the data is actually coming out of the head-mounted device. This is the raw data coming out of in a specific format. They are typically called a JSON format, and that JSON format is imported and customized into your LMS, and the LMS reads the JSON files and actually produces screens, and using their algorithm, they produce a screen. But a lot of time, those LMS screens don't give you the exact action items that your other screens. So we can output the LMS data to your chosen screen. It could be an Excel file, it could be Tableau, it could be your SAP or what have you. But the important thing is that this is the customized step that we move our data to a measurable, readable, interpretable action item in the final analysis. That's now Teledec offers an LMS that we can talk about if you like. We have Bahar in the audience, on the panelist here, so we can help you with the initial setup of how this all looks like. You know, once we created the prototype, we import the data into our LMS, and then we export the data from our LMS to your platform. We can do all of that in this phase. Now, the important thing, the LMS, that you know, your LMS right now does that, is that first of all, we assign the learning to the right audience. In other words, a learner receives an email with a link that when you click here to register for this lesson, and so there are different types of audiences get different links, and they invite learners and manage and support those learners. That's the assignment phase. The next phase is experiences, to monitor the experiences of those learners in the LMS. In other words, who passed, who failed, what was the data, how many attempts, and what was the criteria. All of that is measured in your LMS right now. And then your LMS outputs an output, analytics, and report. And basically, many times, the learning management system, the LMS, outputs to a learning reporting system, which is a different output, different platform than the LMS system. So that's really the 3 phases that you are doing it right now. But when we do it, we want to make sure that all your data is collected in a way that you want it to be collected. For example, In this example, this is a company that I used to work before for many, many years. It's called German Lindy. And this is the typical nitrogen filling station, which a liquid nitrogen is pumped, and there's a heat exchanger that evaporated the liquid nitrogen into gaseous nitrogen, and then we filled it up the bottle or the container or wherever it went to. So this is a simple exercise, but it has a lot of controls. There's a lot of variation because we are dealing with hydrogen, some liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. If you didn't do it right, you could really have a huge accident. So as you can see with the red circles, that these are the controls. And then our objective in the metaverse is to make sure the operator can, depending on the liquid level, depending on the gaseous pressure, depending on the demand, he can manipulate and manage the control to do the exact expected duty. And this is an operator's training, for example. So what we do, we create this drawing that's on the board right now into a metaverse. And then he sees through his goggles exactly what you're saying now. And then he actually operates those switches or the valves or the controls to really do what he's expected to do. And then as a result, all his actions are actually collected from this head-mounted device, and the data is output to the Teledec LMS or your LMS, and the LMS collects the data in a very systematic way. But we actually chose what data we needed to collect in our pre-production stage. And then now we are implementing this in the post-production stage, and these are the data that we want to collect. So after we collect, the data is collected in our LMS, the LMS actually outputs the data to your reporting system. And the report can put on curves and pie charts and bar graphs and what have you in any way you want that matches your KPI. That's the process. And then, with our LMS, if you choose to go with our LMS, we will integrate it with the VR prototype. We'll customize the VR output, ensure the LMS receives and reads the data, and output data is outputted to your specified platform, and we generate the performance report, ensure collected data are completely reported in your expectation and confirmed to your expectation. That is the data management process. So one last slide is that, remember, the creation of a VR development really requires many different skill sets. As you can see, these are the tools, some of the tools that we use. Blender and Adobe and Ableton, different things for different things. And here's the schedule question is actually 12 books from the final learning objectives. In the stage one, when we get that learning objective defined and receive the final CAD files, it can take up to 12 weeks, but I think we can compress it to 8 also, depending on the difficulty. And the budget depends on the package in the selected client. So that's really what we are ready to do. At the final analysis, we are ready to work with you to meet your specific learning environment challenges and budget. And here are some numbers. So the pre-production phase is completely packaged for everything from slide 14 to 24. You will get a copy of this deck, by the way, so you'll know what's included in 25K, the 14 to 24. And the design and development is also the 25K, which is the heading of this webinar. We can create completely, if you did the step 1 and give us the output of the step 1, we will be able to do the step 2 for 25K. And at the tail end, we will be able to integrate and report and do the customization that we talked about for 25K. These are all equally priced, and numbers quoted for budgetary purposes, and actual numbers may vary, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but this is a very aggressive pricing. If anyone have ever priced in a VR project, you can actually Google what does it cost. You will see that this is an unbelievably aggressive pricing. But better than that, we came up with a limited time offer, and the offer is visible to teledec.com/webinars. And you can actually choose, if you choose one, we can include another package at no cost. So for example, you say that, okay, we want to do a design and development, but for the next 30 days, we will do the pre-production consulting for 25 days at no charge added to that. But if you want us to do the step 3, that will be another 25K. But we want to invite you to experiment with a trial of your creative prototype, and then we can all see that what can they do to your company and the learning. So at the very end, I want to say that VR trained managers were 275% more confident to act what they learned after training, an improvement of 40% of our classrooms and 35% of our e-learning courses. This is a really fact data that's published by these people. Again, it'll be part of your deck that you will get it. And thank you. I hope I didn't take too long of a time, but I'd like to wrap up here. So I'd like to open it up to questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Kushal. So as Kushal said, the special offer will be available to everyone. We'll be sending via email, and it's available on the teledec.com/webinars. You'll see it as a clickable link. And you'll receive an email with more details about the offer as well. But this is an incredible offer that's going to be available until the end of September. So Friday, the 30th of September, Friday, September 30th. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kushal, for taking us through. As you can see, it's an incredibly detailed process that Teledec goes through to make sure that we deliver quality when it comes to any of our learning and development, and especially virtual reality. So I'm going to just share my screen now, and we can go to the question section. So if I come here, we've got our first question, and some of these questions were submitted before the call. And so this first one was submitted before the call. But as Chris said, if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat, and then Chris will add them to this slide deck. So let's go. The first question, let me just start the slideshow. So question 1, do you have any VRs off the shelf that you sell for truck drivers, mechanics, hydraulics, or do you have created VR, have you created VR simulations for heavy equipment manufacturers so that instead of a manual for training, they can also provide VR modules? Who do you think, Kushal, should answer this?
Okay, I will answer this. Number one, we do not, we are completely, from the last 35 years, we are a custom shop. We are not a product company, we are a service company, but I think the licensing model really is one size shoe doesn't fit all. I personally believe in customized module that is consumed personally by the learner. So for me, personalization is very important. So the answer is no, but we can talk about it if you feel that we can develop something. But the first part of the truck drivers, mechanics, and hydraulics, we have a very important client that we have, Teledec. I have Dr. TK available to us. Maybe he can shed some light whether a customized versus off-the-shelf heavy, because Dr. TK is actually, he is a principal engineer at Navistar, one of the world's largest truck manufacturers, heavy mechanics, hydraulics. TK, could you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so VR is really emerging. So it is not as mature as the CAD and a lot of data structure and applications. But it will be mainstream, after 10 years or so. So at this time, there's not a lot of off the shelf except some simple game and there are a lot of apps. So what we need is customization right now. And so I think what Kushal has is a lot of custom shop that do things that we cannot find, and they can do for us.
We can very easily build something custom from the element that we already have, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Sorry. Okay. Question number 2. I see that these numbers on the screen are estimates only. How confident are you that you can deliver a custom VR prototype for $25,000?
I want to say that we would not have put the number if we were not confident that we could do it. Our goal is to get into a partnership with you. A prototype is just the beginning, and we will not absolutely gouge you for 1 cent more than what we are committed to do once we have defined the scope. At the very beginning, before you shed out $1 out of your pocket, we'll define the scope, and we'll have a document completely spelling out what is it that we're going to be delivering for $25,000. But from that point onward, it will be our mantra to stay within that budget that we have. We'll do all we can to make sure that you can use that prototype for your own purposes and grow from there. Like TK said, that we see the VR going to be the main vehicle of training for the next generation and beyond. So it's my vision is to really be your VR partner from the very beginning. And on that, I want to add this, that we really want to be your VR resource or learning resource, where if you have any questions or challenge or any specific dilemma, please ask us. There's no cost involved. We will be happy to really reach to our resources and try to give you an answer. So that's really how we look at it. So we absolutely feel that the future is VR and the metaverse. We want to be there with you going forward. So the answer is no.
I also want to add, for $25,000, it is a very good deal. Depends what you're getting. This VR is not like buying 100 pounds of steel, okay? So the specifications for this VR project is very wide. So how do you buy? How do you judge the value? It's very much like you are buying a script from a movie screenwriter, and they can charge $1,000 or they can charge $1 million. Okay, so you cannot judge until you try it. And since you haven't tried it, you are based on reputation. So if people saying that, oh, I use this VR so good for $50,000, you can do this and that. So that kind of reputations will say, oh, there are a lot of people say it is worthwhile and more. So this kind of reputation, a branding, helps in judging the value of the VR, because you're selling something that you cannot measure, quantify, right? How complicated is this VR? Did they put a lot of time thinking about the context, how you train, or they put a lot of time doing the 3D animations? What are they good at? Or some are good at certain things, some are worse at certain things, or in general they are good at overall. So that all depends on brand.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Yes. So it's very much with Teledec, whenever we employ a technology, it's always, the end learner in mind, not just use some fancy technology because it's fun. It's always because it is tied to a learning objective. All right. Fantastic. Question 3. What are the possibilities of a cost? This is kind of similar to the question we just had. What are the possibilities of a cost overrun?
Okay, I want to answer this question just like TK. I want to repeat what TK just said. Like a script from a film, originally it may say have 10 scenes and 5 actors. But if the screen increases to 50 screens, 50 shots, and 200 actors, obviously there'll be a cost overrun. But our goal, like I said, is to not have any overrun at all until the scope drastically changes. That's all I can say. So that's the reason why we want to make sure that our scope is well defined at the very beginning, and we know that we're not going to have to go back and ask for more money, but it has to be all upfront and discussed with your, and that's how our contract will be written. No cost overrun without the approval of the buyer. It's simple.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're back here. So this is not updating, but we'll just go to this. So Kushal, which platform do you use for VR? Are you using AI to help students understand what they are learning?
I'll let the AI expert, Dr. TK, to answer that question.
So I learned AI from a human, a professor. Okay, so nothing will replace a human really teaching. But I think right now it is pre-scripted. They have some heuristics, and then using VR to immerse yourself in that learning experience for right now. So it's not fully intelligent in terms of learning, but it's very smart.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, TK. All right, so let's go to question 5. What is the rough time schedule for delivering a prototype? Is it 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months? Can you give us an idea?
Like I said in my presentation, that we want to make sure that we do not exceed 12 weeks. But I have a feeling that if we can do the pre-production phase rather quickly in a couple of weeks, we should be able to do the development work in the next 4 to 5 weeks, and then do the analytics in the next 1 or 2 weeks. So from end to end, my guesstimate would be to really wrap it all up in about 8 weeks. But for extra 4 weeks are for making sure that testing comes out okay, and there's some tweaking, there's some changes in the system. That's what I've left some additional 2 weeks for. But at the moment, I feel confident that we can do it between 8 to 10 weeks, having 2 more weeks as a buffer in case the client wants some changes and some feedback requires more changes.
Okay, thank you very much. So question 6, how confident are you to integrate the VR with our existing learning management system?
This question I would let Bahar answer it, but I feel very confident that again, there are so many different learning management systems, and a lot of them are proprietary coding that will not allow us to really get into that. So it's a question that we need to ask your learning management system provider to really see if they have the integration API with the JSON files or the head-mounted device output. There's something that if it's an open source learning management system, of course, we can manipulate that and make it happen. Our learning management system is open source, so we can really make it actually very easily, not very easily, but we can make it work to get the output of the head-mounted device into the LMS and output that to a reporting system. So I'm very confident that if it's an open system, there should be no problem. But if it's a closed system, the question should be asked to the LMS supplier, the vendor, who is actually providing you the LMS.
Okay, but Bahar, do you have anything to say on this?
I absolutely agree with Kushal sir, what he has said. Okay, so what basically happens once we upload the VR experience into the headsets, okay, so whatever the learner is doing, the steps which are following are recorded. Not only that, like how accurately he has done those steps, whether he was confused somewhere or he was more confident while doing those steps, that is also recorded. And on the other side, how much time did it take? So all these parameters are recorded in the headset, and these parameters are then passed in the JSON file, which we then import into the LMS. Okay, so then LMS imports this data, and then it comes into record like what exactly the learner has done and whether he has completed these sessions successfully or not. So yeah, we are very confident of integrating this VR data into the LMS, in our existing LMS at least. Yeah.
Okay, so Bahar, one question is, so does all head-mounted device like the Oculus record all the data that we have collected, they recorded, and it comes out and you can dump that data into the LMS? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So what we see generally, most of the headsets contains Android OS, which is mounted in it. Okay, and on the back end, we use softwares like Unity or maybe 3D Max, Blender, Unreal. Okay, so these softwares are programmed like that so that they can capture these steps, and then we can pass this data to the LMS. So absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, so it's a matter of asking your LMS vendor, can you export the recorded file from your LMS into output it to our make it available to us? That's the question. So that
to me, I think it's the same thing, except maybe slightly another directions. Because today we already have LMS. Okay, we have a very advanced LMS, but we are only looking from the screen. Okay, someone is acting, and then you have to answer certain things. You read a scenario, you listen to the audio, and then there's a quiz. So, but right now you're trying to wear a goggle rather than looking at the screen, and you try to do something, and you can speak. So the VR is going to extract your speech into a JSON file. The VR is going to extract your eye and your hand movement, okay, and whatever that you click into a JSON file. JSON file will put into another new module that you will put into a rule to say what is right, what is wrong. Like they will have some business rule, a flow chart to say, this is right, you failed in here. So they have a flow chart of all the things that might happen. So that means that the LMS need to reprogram a little extension to handle the VR, because the JSON files, so-called metadata shooting out from the goggle is metadata, but you have to interpret it in the context of LMS. Right, Bahar?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, thanks, TK.
All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, TK. Thanks, Bahar. Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. So the next one.
Evan,
question 7.
That's not the correct question. Sorry, if you could just escape and go to slide 7. Yeah, that one there.
Thank you. Okay. So, question 7. Case scenario. How do you manage to bounce back from your first project in the, God forbid, worst case scenario that it doesn't obtain the required results you wanted, in order to move on to a second project? I'm assuming within VR. Shaw?
I'm trying to read between the lines. Can we?
Can I answer that? I think what Kushal have is perfect. Start small. This $25,000 is very small. Once you have a taste of it and it is successful and they deliver what you have, you want the second one and you want the third one. But if you fail, Kushal didn't deliver, and then the only thing that you lost is $25,000.
Very simple.
Yes, what I would say on top of that though is that especially with the phase 1, I think you can back me up on this, Kushal, with the pre-production and all of the consultancy that goes into discovering exactly the learning objectives is what will determine whether the first project works or not. Am I correct, Kushal?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is not only true for us or true for VR, it's true for anything that you try. And depending on the success of the first project, then you make a decision. And the whole purpose of the proof of concept is to really try out whether it does or doesn't work for our purpose, our company, our learners. That's the whole purpose. It can work and it may not work. So I think that's a valid question, but I don't want to lie or give an answer that is not true. That is,
I just want to let people know that the $25,000 that if you pay is you're buying actually a lot. So Kushal invests a lot of effort into this. Actually, it's much more than 25,000. Do you know why? Because the initial investment is the most expensive. Like, for example, they have to come up with an avatar of certain things. They have to spend design. So once you have this first thing done, the second and third is actually just copy from the first, and with modifications that they can kind of automate already, right? So the first one is always very expensive, but he's only charging you $25,000.
but I also want to add this, that you have a safety of really going and not going forward after the first phase, which is the pre-production phase. On paper, yes, you are actually getting a very good idea about what you're going to get in the deliverables. So I think the chances of us failing to really your expectation is really going to be found out right in the first phase, in the pre-production phase. Can we or can we not deliver what you're expecting?
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, guys, so we already hit the hour mark. So this is going to be the last question. So I'm just going to go here. Okay, last question. Are there any recurring charges after the prototype is built?
Okay. This question is very important because software today can be sold as a one-time fee or as a SaaS, software as a service. So the way we have priced it in this presentation is a $25K for a delivered one-time charge for the development, and that's it. There's no other charges. However, if you choose to go with a Teledec learning management system, the learning management system it requires a constant handholding, constant registration, constant logging in support. So there is a small per learner fee for every seat. And that's true for all LMS in the world. So you cannot, unless you have your own support mechanism to really support. So I'd see no recurring charges for the development and the phase 1 and phase 2, but phase 3, yes, there is a per seat LMS charge for that. And it's totally negotiable depending on what our involvements are and responsibilities are. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Kushal. And Kushal, I think I'd like you to maybe, well, I'd like to get Samir Mukherjee as well, because he hasn't spoken yet, yes. Just to make some comments. Is Mukherjee still here, Samir?
Yep.
Hi, Samir. There you are.
Yeah.
So, Samir, do you have any comments on because you have a very broad and deep knowledge on the VR space.
And you teach this subject. So you have been quietly observing our mistakes.
See, I'm just giving a little bit inputs in this question number 7. Okay. See, there will be huge recurring charges as far as my knowledge goes, because of, it's every day is just changes, the technology and the mechanism, machines, HMD, all these things. So if you seriously give a very proper solutions, probably your customers should understand these things, that upgradation is one of the very important issue in this.
Very good point. Very
So
good point.
maybe
Please go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. Maybe you can consume some of it, but I think that it will be prudent to keep kind of rules that every year there should be a version changes and you have to pay some charges, kind of.
Yeah. But I read this question as a contract going forward, that this is our one-time charge plus this is our recurring charge. But I'm just saying that there is no recurring charges built into our pricing. But the only recurring charge, just like you said, Professor, very rightly, then of course there's an improvement, there's an upgrade, there's a version change, there will be some implementation and the cost associated.
Just I'm giving
like
another
any other
example.
software.
Another example that the entire LMS is in HMD, on top of HMD, okay? And customers one fine morning ask you to give HoloLens because of its demand. So you have to change it. But instead of HMD, you cannot give HoloLens free of cost, isn't it? So you have to pay. So every day, you know what my assumption at this moment, that VR or metaverse or AR, MR, XR, ML, everything will change every day. So we have to accommodate this price, probably.
It's a commercial discussions, that pricing, right? Either you want to put all these recurring charges upfront, or you want to spread it out like a subscription model. So it doesn't matter. But I have a concern. I'm speaking on behalf of customer. Is it possible to have a look of a demo, right? A demo speaks a million words.
There are, to answer your question, there are several demos in our website, TK. There is a page called VR, and there are demos that you can click as much as you can see on a two-dimensional screen. But as you know, the real demo of a VR is with the goggles, with the head-mounted
real demo.
So anytime a client is interested to see a real demo on a real, of course, I would be very happy to demo it. But unless they're in a 50 miles or a 100-mile radius of Chicago, it's difficult for me to demo it on a goggles. I could go to your office, TK, and give you a demo, but I could not go to Alaska to give a demo just for doing a demo. But if
no, what I meant is our company has a VR goggle, right? Oculus. So like give us a account with a password and let us see, and you are on the phone and you can start talking and let us experience it.
Absolutely.
Like virtually all over the world.
Yeah, if you have a goggles, yes, absolutely. But I'm not really sure how many people in this audience have the head-mounted device and how serious they are about moving in that direction. I don't know. So, but the people that I've talked to, there are many people, most people I know are sitting on the sideline watching the VR development coming in, and they're trying to feel the water, how much money is going to be costing, what benefits, what's the ROI, what do we have to do to make changes to our existing system. So I think that's the reason why I made such an aggressive offer that that's unheard of in the VR world. But I'm willing to help them make a decision. But they have to have some inclination towards that decision making. They have to really, I feel there is no other way but to go that way, is the way I feel, selfishly. But learning managers, learning leaders in the US and abroad unfortunately, Europe and Asia has moved a lot further in VR development than we have in America. And Professor Mukherjee can say a lot about that. Professor, can you tell us a little bit about, because you're totally internationally connected on the VR subject, can you tell us how advanced the rest of the world is compared to America on VR? You were telling me about China the other day.
So exactly, some of the country in Asia like China and Taiwan and some of the, means I should not use the name and all this, are seriously very aggressive. I, to be very honest with you, I do not have much idea about US, that exactly what they're doing and all this, but I know that they are always big. So definitely they're doing. But another very interesting point is that European countries are seriously ahead of so many other countries. So that's the another very interesting point. European universities are seriously in a very good position at this moment.
Fantastic. Okay, Kushal, do you want to? I think we're going to have to wrap up, but go ahead. Kushal,
Right.
the final points.
All I want to do is say this, that if any one of you want to communicate with me directly, Chris, please put my email on the screen and make that a part of our deck, which is the question answer. And I would definitely call or talk or discuss on a one-on-one basis if there's any question from anyone.
Okay, so I just edit
I
that.
look forward.
Okay, very good. So there we go, guys. So it's Kushal Bose at teledec.com. Okay, and the special offer. Okay, so guys, if you want to take us up on this incredible offer that is gonna happen only until the end of September, you just fill out a simple form, and then we've got a little countdown clock there, so you know exactly when the offer lasts until. And it's just teledec.com/first-VR project, and you can come submit your form. We will be sending this via email to everybody, so you'll easily be able to just click, open, and submit your form, and we can have just a quick consultation to see if you are a good fit for our VR development process. Anything else, Kushal, before we wrap up? Any final thoughts?
Thank you again. Hopefully we'll see you next month. And the next topic is storytelling. So a lot of you may already know about that, but I come from a storytelling background, being a filmmaker, and there are, to me, whether it's VR or AR or it's e-learning or even classroom, storytelling is a magic that really it grabs the attention of the learners. And I want to share with you what I have learned over the years, and professionally, and also as a filmmaker. So that subject is storytelling, our next webinar. And you can register it online to teledec.com/webinars.
Absolutely. So Teledec is not just a VR development firm. Teledec does all kinds of e-learning and training development as well. So storytelling is at the absolute heart of the philosophy of Teledec. And so I think this is going to be a really fun one. It's going to happen at the end of September. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to, first and foremost, thanks to the attendees for coming. And I know we went over, but when there are so many good questions that we have to sometimes extend the time a little bit. But thanks so much for coming. Thanks to our panelists again for providing incredible, some incredible information and expertise on this super technical subject. And thanks to you, Kushal, again for presenting.
Thank the panelists.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.